Revenge Office Stories. The CEO didn't even look him in the eye when he said it. We're moving in a different direction. This is the story of Dr. Elena Rodriguez. After being unceremoniously fired, she just nodded and said, "Thank you." Her boss thought he'd erased her. He had no idea he'd just started a 14-day countdown to his own professional demise. This is how the most humiliating moment of a career became a $1.1 billion checkmate. The boardroom was cold. Not just the temperature, the whole spirit of the place. It was a glass cage on the 40th floor, supposed to make you feel on top of the world, but really it just reminded you how far you could fall. On one side of the mahogany table sat Marcus Webb, the new CEO of Nexus Pharmaceuticals, with a board that looked either bored or guilty. On the other side was just Dr. Rodriguez, 40 years old, a PhD in biochemistry, and 9 years of her life, her soul, poured into this company. After all that dedication, she was told her $340,000 salary was an unnecessary line item. Marcus, who'd been CEO for a grand total of 6 months, stared at the wall just over her shoulder. He couldn't even give her the dignity of a direct gaze as he tore her career apart. "The innovation phase is complete, Elena," he'd said, his voice slick and empty. "We're focusing on marketing, streamlining. Your role is redundant." Redundant. The woman who created the very technology that put Nexus on the map, their golden goose, was now redundant. But innovation is never complete. It evolves. It was a lesson he was about to learn in the most expensive way possible. He saw a cost on a spreadsheet, but failed to see the value. More importantly, he failed to see the future she had been building in the shadows, a future that was hers and hers alone. So she stood up, smoothed out her suit, and gave him a simple, polite nod. "Thank you," she said again, her voice perfectly steady. It was the calmest, most powerful lie she had ever told. Inside, a fire was catching. He thought he was closing a chapter. He had no idea her real story was just getting started. To really get the betrayal, you have to know what Nexus was before Marcus Webb showed up. When Elena joined, it wasn't some sleek corporation. It was just a few brilliant, hopeful scientists crammed into a lab, running on cheap coffee and a shared dream to change medicine. The goal was to crack one of the biggest puzzles in pharmacology, controlled release drug delivery. How do you get a drug to the exact part of the body it's needed, at the perfect dose over a long time? For 3 years, Elena led the team chasing this dragon. There were endless nights staring at molecular models and weekends swallowed by failed experiments. But then they had a breakthrough, a polymer-based system that could release a drug predictably over hours, even days. It was revolutionary. It was the foundation of Nexus Pharmaceuticals. Her name was on that patent, right next to the company's. They went public and moved into the shiny glass tower. The original team got stock options, but the core IP belonged to the company they'd built together. For a while, she was proud of that. But she didn't stop there. For the next 6 years, she kept refining the technology. She saw where it would fall short and what the next hurdles would be. She saw the future. The company, however, started to change. The founders cashed out. A new board came in, men in fancy suits who cared more about quarterly earnings than science. They didn't get the research. They just understood the profits it made. Then came Marcus Webb. He was a private equity guy, a shark known for buying companies, stripping them for parts and selling the rest. He had a killer smile and eyes like polished stones. He didn't see Nexus as a hub for innovation. He saw it as an asset to be squeezed. He saw a successful product and a bloated R&D budget. Elena's budget. She tried to warn them. She laid out her roadmap for the next generation of the technology. She had the data, the projections, everything. She explained that their current patent was strong, but it wouldn't be forever. Competitors were catching up. The future wasn't about defending old tech. It was about creating what's next. In one of their last meetings, she pitched a dual pathway system, something light years ahead of their current model. He just leaned back, tapping a gold pen on the table. "Dr. Rodriguez," he sighed, "your job is to maintain the current platform, not go on expensive science projects. Let's not rock the boat." That's when she knew. Her time was up. He wasn't a builder, he was a harvester. And after the harvest, he'd burn the fields. The day she was fired felt like a dream. Walking past the lab she designed, the equipment she ordered, and the brilliant young scientists she mentored. They wouldn't meet her eye. An HR rep silently escorted her out, taking her badge and laptop like she was a criminal. The message was loud and clear: "You are nothing. We own what you did." Driving home, the shock wore off and was replaced by a cold, sharp anger. It wasn't just the firing. It was the breathtaking arrogance. Marcus Webb thought he'd cut a cost. He thought the mind that created his company's entire value could just be switched off. He thought the company owned her intellect. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in her home office and thought about the last 2 years, the condescending meetings, the budget cuts, the dismissal of her ideas. She thought about that expensive science project. And she smiled, because that project wasn't just an idea on a slide deck. It was real. And thanks to his arrogance, it was all hers. The betrayal was complete. And so was her plan. The revenge wasn't cooked up in the 2 weeks after she was fired. It was a seed planted 2 years earlier, a quiet act of self-preservation. It all started when her budget for blue sky research was slashed by 70%. Her project, the next-gen dual pathway system, was officially shelved. She was told to focus only on tiny tweaks to the existing technology. It was a huge blow, but it was also a crystal-clear warning. The company wasn't interested in pioneering anymore, just profiting. She knew with absolute certainty that her dual pathway concept was the future. It could deliver 2 different drugs in a staggered, synergistic sequence. It would make their current billion-dollar tech look like a horse and buggy. Letting it die on a server felt like a betrayal of her life's work. So she made a decision. She would continue the work, but not for Nexus. First step? A meeting with a top-tier IP lawyer who represented independent inventors, not corporations. She explained the situation. Yes, she was a salaried employee, but Nexus had officially and in writing defunded and abandoned the project. Furthermore, she would do all future work on her own time, with her own money. Her lawyer was meticulous. She bought a new computer and software, never connecting it to the Nexus network. She rented time at a private lab for the experiments, paying out of her own pocket and documenting every invoice. She kept a detailed log of her hours, all nights, weekends, and holidays. She was living a grueling secret life. By day, she did the boring maintenance work Marcus demanded. By night, she was building the future. She formed a simple LLC, Athena Innovative Solutions. Under that name, as an independent entity, she filed the patent for the synergistic dual pathway release system. It cost her a small fortune in legal fees, but she saw it as an investment in herself. It was her insurance policy against the corporate short-sightedness that was eating her company alive. For 2 years, she lived this double life. She watched Nexus get fat and happy, while Marcus Webb cut costs and played financial games to boost the stock price. He was so proud of trimming the fat, never realizing he was carving out the company's heart. The day he fired her, she felt a chilling sense of calm. He was handing her the final piece of the puzzle. By firing her, he severed any lingering connection she had to the company. He set her free. Her non-compete clause was standard. It stopped her from working for a competitor, but it said nothing about selling her own, independently owned intellectual property. It was a loophole the size of a canyon, and he just shoved her right through it. So, on day 1, she didn't update her resume. She called her patent lawyer. "It's time," she said. They spent the next 2 days preparing the package. The finalized patent, the full data set from her research, and the market analysis showing how this new tech wouldn't just compete with Nexus's core product, it would make it obsolete. On day 3, her lawyer made a single call, not to a dozen buyers, Just one. Meridian Biotech, Nexus's biggest and hungriest competitor. They had been trying for years to create something that could rival Nexus's original patent. They agreed to a meeting for the next day, thinking they were about to meet a disgruntled ex-employee. They had no idea they were about to be handed the keys to the kingdom. The meeting with Meridian Biotech was on neutral ground in a quiet law office. Dr. Rodriguez walked in not as a job seeker, but as the founder of Athena Innovative Solutions. Across the table were their CEO, their head of R&D, and a team of lawyers who looked like they charged by the breath. She skipped the small talk and went straight to the science. For an hour, she walked them through the dual pathway system, the data, the mechanics. The look on their R&D head's face shifted from skepticism to pure astonishment. He got it. He saw instantly what Marcus Webb had been too arrogant to even look at. Then, she switched to the market. She put up a slide. On the left, Nexus's projected revenue for the next 10 years on their aging tech. On the right, the projection for a company holding her new patent. The Nexus chart showed a slow, painful decline. The other was a rocket ship. Nexus's entire market position, she said calmly, is built on a technology that is now, as of this moment, obsolete. They just don't know it yet. Their lawyers pounced. Ownership? Her employment? This was the moment. Her attorney laid out the ironclad timeline. The Nexus memos defunding the project, the lab invoices, the LLC, and the patent filed and granted cleanly to Athena Innovative Solutions. They grilled them for 2 hours, looking for any crack. They found nothing. The mood in the room had completely shifted. She wasn't an inventor anymore. She was a weapon. The negotiations were fast and brutal. They knew what this was. A 10-year head start on the entire industry and the ability to kill their biggest rival overnight. Their first offer was big. She countered. She was selling them more than a patent. She was selling them market dominance. She wanted a number that would send a shockwave through the industry. A number that would be a monument to Marcus Webb's colossal mistake. They settled the deal on day 9. A $25 million payment up front to her LLC. And more importantly, a royalty structure that their own analysts projected would be worth a conservative $1.1 billion over the life of the patent. On day 12, the $25 million hit her business account. The feeling was electric. It wasn't just money. It was validation. On day 14, exactly 2 weeks after she'd left Nexus with a cardboard box, Meridian Biotech issued a press release at 8 a.m., just before the market opened. The headline was a work of art. Meridian Biotech acquires revolutionary drug delivery patent, poised to dominate next generation of therapeutics. It detailed the acquisition of a superior next-generation dual pathway system from a private entity, Athena Innovative Solutions. Her name wasn't mentioned. It didn't have to be. Everyone in the industry knew who was behind the tech at Nexus. She was at home watching the news. As soon as the story broke, the tickers went wild. Meridian's stock, MRDN, shot up 15% in 5 minutes, then 20%. Then the camera cut to the ticker for Nexus Pharmaceuticals, NEXS. It was a bloodbath. The stock plunged, losing billions in market cap in minutes. Her phone exploded. Frantic texts from old colleagues. One friend still inside wrote, "Total chaos. Marcus is locked in his office. The board called an emergency meeting." That was the real revenge. Not a shouting match. Just the cold, brutal logic of the market. Marcus Webb tried to save $340,000 a year. That decision just cost his shareholders billions in a single morning. The man who called her work an expensive science project just saw it become the most expensive mistake in his company's history. She took a sip of her coffee and watched his empire crumble. So, how does a patent, a stack of paper and data, get valued at over $1 billion? It's not magic. It's a mix of cold math and brutal strategy. First, you have the cost approach. This is the baseline. What would it cost someone else to make this from scratch? You have to factor in salaries, lab equipment, years of trial and error. For this dual pathway system, they estimated a competitor would need at least 5 to 7 years and hundreds of millions of dollars just to get to the starting line, with no guarantee of success. So the value was already huge. But that's the floor, not the ceiling. The second and much bigger method is the income approach. This is where the billion-dollar number really came from. This asks, how much money will this thing make? They built models projecting future cash flows. They looked at every drug Nexus made with the old tech. Then they calculated how the new system could not only improve those drugs, but create whole new combination therapies. Think about it. Instead of just a painkiller, you get a single pill with an instant-release painkiller and a slow-release anti-inflammatory. The market for that is staggering. Her patent didn't just represent an improvement, it was a whole new paradigm. Meridian wasn't just buying a patent. They were buying a guaranteed revenue fire hose for the next 15 years. But the third method, the market approach, is what sealed the deal and defined the revenge. The real question wasn't, what is this worth in a vacuum? It was, what is this worth to Meridian Biotech? The answer? Everything. For Meridian, this patent was a silver bullet. It gave them the one thing they'd been chasing for a decade, a clear, legal, and decisive way to crush their biggest rival. The value wasn't just in the money Meridian would make. It was in the money Nexus would lose. The moment Meridian acquired her patent, Nexus's primary asset became obsolete. The $1.1 billion valuation wasn't just a price tag on an invention. It was the price tag on Nexus's defeat. The final piece was the legal strength. A patent with holes is worth a fraction of one that's ironclad. Elena's 2 years of meticulous documentation and legal separation from Nexus weren't just to protect herself. They were to maximize the asset's value. When Meridian's lawyers finished their due diligence and realized the patent was untouchable, the value was locked in. It was a clean kill. In the weeks that followed, the fallout for Nexus was even worse than she could have imagined. The initial stock drop was just the start. As analysts digested what had happened, they issued devastating downgrades. The stock ended up losing nearly 40% of its value. Billions of dollars in shareholder wealth vanished. The emergency board meeting was, by all accounts, a bloodbath. The big investors were furious. How could the CEO have let the company's innovative core, personified in Dr. Rodriguez, walk out the door and straight to their arch-rival? Marcus Webb had no answers. His streamlining strategy was exposed as a hollow, short-sighted gamble. Nexus's lawyers sent a blustering letter threatening to sue. Her attorney responded by sending them a single binder containing everything: the memos defunding her project, the lab invoices, the LLC docs, and a polite note inviting them to have their own corporate negligence detailed in a public court record. They went silent. 3 weeks after he fired her, Marcus Webb was terminated by the board. His golden parachute was reportedly contested by shareholders. He left not as a hero of efficiency, but as the architect of one of the most spectacular self-inflicted disasters in pharma history. As for Dr. Rodriguez, her life changed. But the real victory was quieter. It was the power that came from knowing her own worth and the laws that protect it. Her story became a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and R&D labs everywhere. The lesson is this: a company can buy your time and rent your skills, but they can't own your mind. Companies that forget this, that see their innovators as costs instead of assets, are just writing their own obituaries. Her revenge wasn't emotional. It was a business strategy. It was a victory of creation over extraction. Elena Rodriguez, the redundant scientist, was gone. In her place stood the founder of Athena Innovative Solutions, a key partner to one of the world's top biotech firms. Her final meeting with Nexus wasn't in their fancy boardroom, but in their lawyer's sterile office, where they signed a settlement confirming they would never challenge her patent. They had no choice. Her triumph wasn't just in the billion-dollar deal. It was in the silence from their end of the table. Today, she doesn't work in a lab. She sits on boards. She funds the next generation of expensive science projects and invests in the brilliant, restless minds that short-sighted CEOs are so quick to dismiss. The story of her time at Nexus ended with her walking out with a cardboard box. But the real ending happened a month later, when she walked into Meridian Biotech's headquarters, not as an employee, but as a respected partner. Their CEO greeted her at the door, shook her hand, and said, "Welcome, Dr. Rodriguez. We're excited to build the future with you." To every creator, innovator, and person who has ever been made to feel redundant, know your worth. Protect your mind and own your future. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated at work? Share your story in the comments below. Let's remind everyone of the power of knowing your own value